I will call the February 1st Financial Affairs Committee meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call. I'll do it in the order I see people's faces on the screen. Jennifer Lohman.
Here.
Julie Haywood.
Sorry, couldn't get to my unmute button here.
David Cohen.
Present.
Pam Henry.
Present.
Leo Mulhern.
Present.
Zachary Epps.
Present.
And Dan Schultz.
Present.
And I'll note for the record that Charles Burdell Williams is absent this evening. I'll ask for approval of the minutes of last month's Financial Affairs Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Jennifer Lemon.
Do I have a second?
Second, Pam Henry.
And all in favor of approval of those minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. And I'll now turn the meeting over to Mr. Linderman.
Okay. I'm not going to go into presentation mode because I'm going to turn it right over to our guest tonight. But tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about debt refunding, refinancing option. So we have our financial advisors with us tonight. And what I want to do is just kind of jump right into that if I can, and introduce to you, we got Brian Bradley, Mike Lillis, all from RBC, and Brad Remick from PFM. Are one of you going to share a screen, or do you want me to pull it up?
If you could pull it up, Chuck, that would be good. I think
Okay.
I got an email from Brad who's having trouble logging in.
Yeah, I thought I saw his name on there, but he could be. Yeah, it looks like he's on the get or in the participant list. I don't see it still loading. So why don't we just start? So we're not.
Yeah, no, we can start. So hopefully, Chuck, I'm gonna just go through with some of the board members, really just a recapitulation of interest rates and what we've been seeing in the market. And then we'll talk directly about the existing debt and some of the opportunities within that portfolio for a potential refinancing for savings for the district and the taxpayer. So real quick on page one, we've certainly seen a increase in interest rates as of late, especially what the Fed is really calling for this year. I think the loose credit markets are over. We're certainly going to be seeing a tightening of credits, and the spike in interest rates that you see, not only in treasury rates that I'm sure you see every day on CNBC, but also for our tax exempt market, which is represented by those lighter lines there, MMD. Municipal bonds price off a different index since they're tax exempt. But for all the asset classes, any fixed income, we've seen a march to higher rates, given obviously some inflation concerns. And RBC is calling for 4 interest rate hikes this year, which, there's some banks that are quite frankly calling for more hikes. But we've really seen an absolute a lot amount of volatility. So who knows where the market's going to end up. We have other things at play like midterm elections, COVID issues, and so we'll see where the market plays. But we've definitely seen a march towards higher rates, and we're expecting rates to increase. Page 2. With all that said, and I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but if you do pull the camera back a little further, this is January 2009 to present. So roughly a 12-year look at the municipal bond market. And again, although we've seen higher rates, we've all been quite spoiled for quite some time, to be honest with you. We're still from a overall market perspective, we're still near historical lows. We're not very far off of all-time lows that really we've all been fortunate, probably over the past 13 years or so to really have such an accommodative market. So rates have creeped up, but it's still incredibly accommodative. Page 3 is just where RBC is looking with respect to rate hikes. We fully expect one in March, but we're forecasting pretty much 100% rate hike in June, September, and December. But again, there's some offsetting factors. Who knows with COVID, midterm elections, inflation, and also the asset purchases that the Fed's been winding down. So we'll see. We're certainly expecting higher rates though down the pike. I'll just pause there. I didn't know if Ben or Brad hopped on and they had anything to add with respect to the market in general.
Still having trouble.
Yeah, I don't see any more text from Brad, so I'm going to keep going. So page 4 is just a recapitulation of the 14 bond issues the district has outstanding. Page 5. I've highlighted the series that we're looking to potentially refinance. The plan right now calls to issue refunding bonds in one or more series, depending on market conditions at the time. We're obviously beholden to what the market gives us at the time of pricing, but since we're tapping both the taxable market and the tax exempt, and we've seen a lot of volatility in all the markets, it could be possible that we issue the bonds in one or more series, again, depending on market conditions at the time. But these 6 series of bonds are what currently produces some pretty significant economic savings for the board and the taxpayers at Cheltenham. So we can go over to page 6 and the summary of the refunding. This is the part probably everyone cares about, to be honest with you. And this is what both RBC and PFM is trying to accomplish for the board. So in aggregate, we're looking at $72,575,000 of bonds, which have some economic savings. Again, it's highly likely we will not refund all of them, but those are the bonds that we're looking at currently, and those are the bonds that provide some pretty significant savings. The average coupon of the 6 series is about a 4.57%. Based on current market rates, we'd be issuing about $75 million in bonds to refund those 6 outstanding series. The final maturity would be 2041. We're not extending the debt. We're not shortening the debt. It is coterminous with the existing debt, and the plan currently calls for taking savings in equal annual installments. The new cost of the refunding bonds is 3.26%. So you're lowering your rate by 131 basis points, 1.3% in aggregate. And as you can see in that blue highlighted column there, savings based on current market conditions are about 6.3 million, which is 8.7%. Pretty significant economics. As a rule of thumb, we generally look for 3% savings. We're well north of that and just under 9%. The columns to the right, the cash flow savings, prior debt service, that's if you don't refinance, that's the stream of debt payments you would make to bondholders. Refunding debt service, again, that is an estimation based on current market rates, what the debt service on a refinancing issue would look like. And the savings column is simply the difference between the two. And as you can see, it's about $330,000 in savings per year for an aggregate of $6.3 million. And with that,
Just for the board's sake, you do have a copy of this in your it's in board docs for you. So, sorry.
No, you're okay. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, or if you wanted to go on to the timetable and what our thoughts are with respect to being able to enter the market, I can do that. Whatever you prefer.
Let's go to the timetable here.
Okay, it's a pretty aggressive schedule. Again, we're trying to take advantage of the market. Really, we'll begin in earnest next week. PFM will begin putting together the preliminary official statement, and we'll reach out to the rating agencies. On February 8th, the team will be there with bond counsel to present the parameters bond purchase proposal and the parameters bond resolution. And then probably a week later, we can get on the horn with S&P and have our rating call. And then really what we're looking to is to try to hit the market the week of March 7th to take advantage of interest rates. Again, the plan calls for a couple of different closing dates for the refinancing, but that's all going to be very fluid depending on market conditions. More than happy to answer any questions, and I'm not sure if Brad got in or Ben was able to get in.
So obviously, we did discuss this last week with Joel and Dan, that we knew preliminarily, and we had to kind of get on a little bit of a fast track here, basically because the Fed's looking to raise rates. So you want to be able to take advantage of this if you can. So
I'll take some questions now. We're obviously not going to keep the guests around for questions at the end. So I see Ms. Haywood has her hand raised. Go ahead, Ms. Haywood.
Thank you, Mr. Fishbein. Thank you for the presentation. Just one question about the parameters resolution. We typically get that prior to the legislative meeting. Can we expect to get this before the legislative meeting on the 8th?
Yes, you absolutely will. In fact, I owe your bond counsel some numbers tomorrow to incorporate.
Okay, great. That's great. So we can look at that ahead of time. And I'm very, I think you might be on mute.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
now we can.
Okay.
So very pleased that we're going in this direction, and it's a really significant savings for us over time. So always appreciate looking into savings for the district.
On behalf of PFM and RBC, our pleasure. We've enjoyed a very long working relationship with the district, and we look forward to continuing it.
Yeah, any other board members have questions? I just had one that it seems counterintuitive to me that if interest rates are going up, we would achieve these savings. Don't we usually achieve them when interest rates are going down, not up?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But in all honesty, as quick as they've gone up, we've seen a sell-off and rates drop. Again, it's been very volatile. And the point of the parameters is if rates do drop and rates remain accommodative, all the administrative aspect is done and completed. So you're able to enter the market and capture those savings.
Yeah, I appreciate it. The numbers look great. And obviously it's better for us to pay less interest than more. So thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Fishbein, if I might ask if Brian, you want to comment? One question I had was making sure we still had the ability to do any new borrowing if needed, depending on your facilities plan. Brian assures me we still can. That's still correct, right, Brian?
Correct. And in fact, those savings would help to obviously offset the cost of that new money if it's being contemplated.
Hearing no further questions, seeing no further raised hands, thank you for that part of the presentation. And I guess you can take it away, Mr. Linderman.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah,
Brian,
and thanks.
Dan.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. Sorry. Okay.
We'll be talking, we'll talk tomorrow. So,
Nice job. Yeah.
okay. So that was the agenda. We're also going to talk about, we have the year-to-date revenues and expenses for 2 months that you have. We'll talk a little bit about the auditor presentation, which we have scheduled for next week prior to the legislative meeting. The MCIU budget is there. We received that actually the end of last week. And we'll talk about our budget, and we have some information on the food service RFP, which is on the streets right now. We just did the debt refunding. We're refinancing, refunding. So here's our, this is the end of December, your year-to-date numbers compared to budget. And there's your end of January. We did close out a little early to get these numbers compiled, so they may be off by a little bit, but that's okay, because yesterday was the end of the month, and we actually closed out the end of last week. The audit, the final audit, we do have the final audit there, and a draft copy is available for the board in the board docs for you tonight. So the plan is to have the auditors do a presentation to the board at 6 o'clock next Tuesday before the board meeting. Normally that's the way it's done. We will then kind of follow up as Mr. Fishbein and Mr. Schultz, we discussed at the following Finance Committee meeting next month. We'll have more detailed questions on it. And of course, you're able to ask any questions you want to the auditors. And I believe what they will tell you is if when they're done their presentation, if you have any questions of them, you're free to contact them directly, either email or give them a call. If you have any questions you don't want to ask. Typically, it's a quick overview of everything, and everything looks pretty good as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this will be my 43rd audit I've done for a school. So, and then we have an agenda item for next week, the Montgomery County IU general operating budget. The actual amount of their budget didn't change. Our contribution, Cheltenham's contribution is actually about the same. It's actually a $57 decrease for what that's worth. So I would guess that Ms. Sloman, you're going to have something. You probably got a presentation, a bigger presentation than I got. I just got the information on it, which we've attached. So.
Yeah, we didn't get much more of a larger presentation actually, but we were really tight for time in that meeting last week. So they basically said that the budget was holding its own. Okay, good. Yeah.
Then we're going to talk a little bit about our budget, and we've talked about these. These are kind of the big hit areas we're going to talk about in the budget. And they continue to be the big hit areas. Debt, hopefully, will, if everything goes well and the rates stay at least where they are right now, you'll save what you were shown tonight. Hopefully they don't go up too much, or maybe they even come down a little bit and you save a little bit more. So that's always the issue with the market, and the beauty of having a parameters resolution as opposed to the way school districts used to do it, probably 5 or 8 years ago, is you're able to have your people kind of defer. Normally, the old way of refinancing, we would have actually had to pre-sell the bonds the day before the board meeting, come to you with a resolution and the exact amount. And you would have had to approve that going into it. And we would have just been at the mercy of whatever the market was that day. So this will help. The budget, again, we have contracts expiring. Benefits are up. We talked about this before. We are going to have, Dr. Scriven and I are going to have we're going to focus the March presentation for finance on department budgets. So we will talk in more detail about things like special ed. I do have a kind of annoying chart on charter school costs in a second. So don't kill the messenger. So this is kind of a recap of our charter school costs this year. Last year you had actual about $2 million under. This year our budget's $3.2 million. We've spent about $1.5 million already. And when you use the number of students that we have right now, which is 153, our projection is to be just under 3.5 million for the year in charter school costs. So not a great number. We're going to be over budget in that category by just under $300,000. Hopefully the numbers they've kind of inched their way up a little bit since we really had any kind of meaningful discussion on charter schools back in October, November. So I'm hoping you are still, to make this doesn't make you feel any better, you're still a lot better off than some schools. And really most of yours are cyber. There are some schools with a great number of brick and mortar, which in addition to the tuition costs, you then have additional costs for transportation that seem to really rack up pretty quick. This is the budget, kind of the first, we've been showing you this budget for a couple months. So here's next year's budget. And again, this is just the really high level, trying to put everything into it that is coming into us. Very minor. We only have one contract we could add into the salaries. Benefits, as you know, are going up. That's a big increase there. I do anticipate the revenues to be going up a little more than we have them there. And we will have this next week, Lou and I will be attending a Commonwealth budget seminar. So we'll see what the governor has in store for us for next year. We have factored in the current year's budget for state, which is why it's a little bit higher. And again, hopefully the refinancing is done. You'll be able to knock the debt down, $330,000 or so. And okay, this is kind of a chart. It's all the millage rates in Montgomery County. That's the really tall bar. So, I hate showing it to you, but it's what it is. These are the most recent millage rates for everybody, and including us. This is another chart, and we get these off of our data analytic program, Forecast 5. This is a chart that shows the per pupil spending comparison. So the top line is us. That's the blue line. That's our district. That's Cheltenham. I'll call it salmon orange line is our peer average, and by peer we are talking to our neighboring peers, the schools that most of them generally border us. Not Philly, of course, but it's the Springfields, it's the Jenkintowns, it's the Abingtons, it's the Colonials. It's the ones that are in the geographically very close to us. And then the green is the, or the red is the regional average, and that's Montgomery County. And the green is the state average. This is fund balance. What's happened over the past years, this does not include, this is only up through 2020. So your 2021 is going to have a significant increase in it because of the COVID issues we talked about, and the auditors will get in a little more detail on it. But you did have a couple years of kind of going down in budget, and you know, I always look at the red, which is the unassigned fund balance, which you really should be focusing closer to about 8%. That's about the equivalent of 2 months expenditures for a school district. It's what the rating agencies look for when we do our rating call. You heard our financial advisors talk about. We will have a rating call probably next week. Probably after the parameters resolution, if it's approved, we'll have a rating call after that with S&P. And one of the things they talk about are reserves. So this again, this is another chart with, these are the neighboring, what I'll call the geographic neighboring districts here, and what their teacher staffing ratio is. So you can see the green bar in this chart actually shows the full-time equivalent number of teachers. And it's a little skewed because obviously Abington is very much bigger than us. But the smaller numbers with the dots inside, this is a two-sided graph with two axes. The axis on the left is full-time equivalent professional staff. So that's basically everybody that's included in their union or association for professional staff teachers. So the smaller dots correspond to the right axis, and that is the enrollment of and the student staff ratio. So it's the number of students per staff member. So we are very low. Jenkintown is lower than us. They're the only one lower than us of the surrounding districts. But again, not a surprise for you guys. It's just one more year newer in data since I showed it to you last year. I don't know, probably about last year this time. This is a chart that shows what the difference in change of your enrollment versus the difference in change of your staffing. So the orange is the district enrollment, what has happened since the 2014-15 school year, you know, all the way up to the 2020-21 school year. So back in 2014-15, I believe you had about 4,600 students. Now you're about 4,200. And your staffing didn't decline till the 2021 school year. Took a little bit of a decline, but you were actually going up in staff while your enrollment was going down. Which would correlate to the bar graph I showed you before. This is a history of what you've done with taxes over the years. I think you've seen this chart before, so I won't belabor it anymore. The calendar, again, we are going to have to do a preliminary budget approval in May, and then have the budget approved in June. So, and that's because you opted out of the Act 1 ability to raise any taxes in addition to the Act 1 index. The Act 1 index is 3.4% this year. That's the maximum you could do. I'm not saying you're going to do that, but that's the maximum you could do. Food service, we're on to the bids are on the street. We will have a pre-bid meeting, actually the day after the finance committee meeting next month. So we have sent out bids to the major food service management companies, and it's posted on our webpage, and the ads started in the paper. So there's some timelines. We will have a public opening on the 25th and hopefully approving it with, you guys would approve the new contract shortly thereafter. These are some things, and actually included in the board docs for the committee is what in the RFP is called section Q. It's the section that deals with kind of specialty things that the district has requested. And because generally 90% of the RFP is actually driven by the state and the national school lunch program. So we have to follow that mostly, but section Q enables us to adjust things. So some of the things we have requested that the new contractor would supply breakfast in every school. And there's some menu requirements in there that they can't just have oatmeal and fruit every day. It's got to have a different menu from the initial 21-day cycle. The high school to return to the National School Lunch Program. Summer feeding. So it talks about summer feeding. And summer feeding can actually include more than just our schools providing summer feeding. And what our consultant recommends is we probably pick 2 schools that we would feed out of in the summer. Obviously, one of them would either be the high school or Cedar Brook, and the other would probably be whatever elementary school is kind of closer to the other end of the district. But you can also provide summer feeding to other organizations that have summer programs going on. They actually would qualify to get, for us to get reimbursement by providing them some summer food. So I know we did this at Great Valley. They also did it at Coatesville, the summer feeding. There's some summer programs in the area that were provided for breakfast and lunch to those programs. Sustainability is big. It's going to require that they comply with everything we do with recycling, and it's going to require they support our sustainability in purchasing and operation, and that's where you kind of get into your polystyrene reduction in use, and hopefully we can use that section. If you're looking for sustainability, it's on page 14. It's number 1 and number 7 in section Q. Nutrition education. They have to schedule, each bidder is going to have to give us a schedule of dates for monthly nutrition education activities and conduct and they will conduct each year during the term, and also include actual educational materials that they will introduce to students in the cafeteria and in the classroom as appropriate. We also, in section Q, number 5 on page 14, we talk about having the successful contractor actively participate and seek opportunities for you to participate with farm to school opportunities, possibly even developing some gardens at some of the schools. I know we had a pretty successful 2 gardens in Great Valley where kids actually get involved in helping the cafeteria people grow vegetables that are then used in the school lunch program. So it's kind of fun to see the kids go out and pick tomatoes and cilantro and whatever and make salsa, whatever they're making. But it's kind of, and it's amazing that the kids that don't normally eat things like salsa because it's tomatoes and stuff, they eat it when they're picking it and they're making it themselves or helping to make it. So these are the 2 things we have for the agenda, actually action items for legislation for the legislative meeting, the parameters resolution for those series. And like you said, there are six different series, but they're 4 years worth of, a couple of those years have 2 in each year, and approval of the Montgomery County IU general operating budget. So, okay.
Go out to the board for any questions. I see no raised hands. Oh, spoke too soon. Ms. Lohman,
Sorry, Mr. Fishbein.
quite all right.
Thank you, Mr. Linderman. I know that you had showed us something similar to the several of those charts and graphs before, but could you go back to the one that has the line, the red, orange, 4 different lines? That one, thank you. And could you explain why? Well, I mean, I'm going to guess that why we are so sort of different from the rest of our peers.
Well, you're so different from the rest of your peers because of this chart.
It's the teacher ratio. Okay.
It's total staffing. It's not just teachers. I mean,
Okay.
I unfortunately forecast 5 because they deal with data provided from the state, PIMS data. It's the data from the state will detail, and I could do this for administrators. I could do this for teachers. I can't do it for support staff because the state does not gather that data the way they gather certified teacher data. Now, if I were to include a separate bar for Lower Marion, they would be up with us, maybe even above us. So that's as an example. So there are a number of schools that are significantly below that in Montgomery County, which is why they're down there. And really the raw data, I mean, I just love data. So this is kind of good, but your budget is very high, your taxes are very high. And it's really just a comparison of your total budget divided by your total students. So you've got $120 some million budget, and you got just over 4,000 students.
But Chuck, just to jump in, it does speak to the policy that we have in terms of class capacity is right around 25. However, when you look at our enrollment in many areas, we're far below what the capacity level is. Hence, we are overstaffed in many areas where we have not made the adjustments to be in alignment, enrollment versus staffing. So I just want to, I want to call out that a lot of this, even though not all of it, is around the teacher to student ratio. So, and when you look at those slides, I mean, it clearly depicts that.
Sorry.
Yep,
Was
thank
your
you.
question answered, Ms. Lohman?
Yeah, that was where I kind of was guessing that was going, but I just wanted to make sure I was on the right track. Thank you, Mr. Linderman and Dr. Scriven.
Thank you. And Ms. Haywood.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fishbein. Thank you, Mr. Linderman. A couple of questions kind of tagging on what we just were observing in terms of our per pupil ratio. Class size, Dr. Scriven, as you said, is one issue that we have not really tackled for a while, and that is one issue that I know is on the policy committee agenda in terms of that policy to be looked at sometime this year before the end of the year. A tough discussion to have, but one that we need to have in order to adjust, I think, some of the per pupil expenditures, which are pretty out of alignment with other school districts, or peer school districts. My question goes back to the revenues and the expenditure slide, Mr. Linderman. Yes, that one. For
The
the other,
budget?
yeah, that
With
one,
the-
that's perfect.
Okay.
For The category 500, the other purchase services, such a significant increase. Can you clarify why that increase? The $4 million increase?
Well, most of that was the charter school bump. You had hardly budgeted for charter schools in 2021 and 1920.
Mhm.
We had to significantly, we only increased to 3.2 million. But we did increase it, and I pushed it up a little bit more for next year, hoping that that's enough. I'll have a better budget slide on the charter school. I need to calculate our tuition rate because even if we kept the same number of students this year, the cost will probably go up because the tuition rate is calculated based on your budget divided by the number of students you have. Basically, there's some carve outs in that formula that before you calculate it. It's not as true as that slide that we just talked about with the kind of student spending or the student spending comparison. So yeah.
And I know that this is preliminary, but
And also, if you're looking at 2021, let's not fail to forget that we only spent 60% of our transportation budget that last year. So there was about $2 or $3 million that did not get spent because of COVID. You weren't running the buses. Ms. Michaels had negotiated a 60% payment to Cheltenham Trans, and we paid that. Now, there were some buses running there toward the end, and we had some non-public buses running, but still, all in all, it was several million. So last year's actual should have been, significantly higher than that if it was a normal year.
okay. And then I guess the second question has to do with, really the charter school expenditures, which we know were very high last year and will probably continue to be high for the following year. And I guess the question I have for administration is, looking at those 153 students and seeing, again, as the board had requested, if any of those students could be brought back in district or provided the VLN services as an alternative to going to a cyber charter school. I'm hoping that we continue to explore that avenue so that we can reduce cyber charter costs going forward, which we know are really out of line.
So, Mrs. Haywood, just to confirm that is definitely something that we will be looking into moving forward throughout the remainder of this year as we approach the summer.
Thank you. And then just one last comment as it relates to, I think, the per pupil expenditure. As a board member, I'm not comfortable spending $24,000 per student when we're looking at, unfortunately, the performance that academic performance that we have as compared to other school districts. And I think we need to more closely look at that and align what we're spending more effectively, so that our students are actually getting the value of those expenditures in relation to performance. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Mr. Schultz.
Thank you. I will just say I share Ms. Haywood's concern around the charter school enrollment, and I'm optimistic that we will find ways to bring students back. My question is around the benefits increases. And Mr. Cohen last month mentioned towards the end of the meeting that the township recently, I guess they made changes to the way their benefits, their benefit. I don't know if it's a vendor change or what exactly. I'm curious if we've learned anything more about what they did, but more specifically, I'm curious if we have any control, might not be the right word, but tactics to be able to address that dramatic increase in benefits or get those costs lower in the long run. I appreciate it might not be possible for this budget year.
Well, we've reached out to Marsh for other reasons to try and to help us with some stuff. I know you're coming off of 2 years of almost no increases in benefits, and the prescription number is really high at 23%. The blended number and that's kind of what we budget on, that's what's done, is a little over 11% for the two of them together. There's a company that Marsh doesn't use, I'm familiar with through PASBO, called Anuvu, and they do some very deep digging into not only trends but future trends. A lot of your consultants and benefits people will look at your rolling past trends and give you some numbers. The Anuvu people and some other higher level people around the country are projecting that we could see deep double digits for the next couple of years. I'm hoping that's not true, but you know, you had last year where people hardly went to the doctor unless it was an absolute emergency, and now everybody's going back, and I guess you're seeing that go up. And I'm just kind of hypothetically based on what I've heard. And again, you know, what your utilization is, we could take a little deeper dive maybe next time into our that was our first look. We get a first look in November of benefits. We are scheduled to get a second look in February. So the second look may be better. The second look may be worse. So you know, hopefully if you we can maybe we can spend a little. It is a big jump in numbers, and maybe after Dr. Scriven and I talk about a few of the major departments next month, we can spend a little time on the second look benefit renewal with that we're going to get from Marsh.
Thank you.
Schultz, thank you, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Cohen, go ahead.
Thank you. I also just want to add, my understanding is in terms of the teachers, in addition to the ratio and the ratio not dropping as much to correspond with the decreasing number of students, is that our teachers are very highly compensated, and that the majority of our teachers are at the high end of our range in terms of salary. So just mentioning that, and Mr. Lindeman, please, if you want to expand upon that or clarify my comments, I would be welcome. And that's also, I think, a factor in terms of our high costs.
Yeah, and Dr. Scriven knows I have a great slide on that too. I have about 30 great slides, and well, they're great if you're a numbers person. They're not great if you like, the numbers aren't great, but they're great numbers. They're good slides. And you're absolutely correct, Mr. Cohen. You know, you have a double whammy here. You have very small class sizes, some almost ridiculously small, and you have, you know, pretty tenured teachers that are very high on the salary schedule. And I have one chart that I'm thinking of, and Dr. Scriven probably knows which one I'm talking about. It's the one that kind of plots every teacher on a scattergram, and I'm able to place the what I'll call peer schools on there too, and then I can highlight just our teachers, and you can see where they show up on the scattergram, and they're pretty much at the top. There's other schools at the top, but we're pretty much at the top. You'll see that slide coming up in a few weeks. I'm sandbagging that for another day.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have some follow-up questions to all of that. I particularly like thinking about these numbers as well, because I think the more we think about them and explore them, the more we might find ways to reduce the high costs. And it has always been something I'd like to see, if we could tease out more of these categories. Are we spending more on facilities? Are we spending more on energy? Are we spending more on transportation? All of those things could be plotted. And what we know, given what you just told us, was that we were high on teachers for both the reason that we have small class size and the reason that we have tenured, highly paid teachers. So are there other things like that that we don't know we're higher on because we have never looked at those numbers? And it seems, I don't know whether Forecast 5 can do that for you in categories like the ones I just rattled off or others that I didn't think of. But I would love to have a presentation that explores some of the other numbers too, because I think that would be helpful in our analysis of how to reduce costs.
The answer is yes and yes.
Okay, super.
As best we can. There are some specific ones which do a great job, and there are some ones I'll have to go through and make sure I tag the right data points and things. But it is absolutely doable. There's many things on there, and it's one of the greater tools for helping boards make decisions, because so often the boards just said, like, here's your salaries, here's your benefits. Not why. Why are our benefits going up, or why is our transportation going up? Well, I'll be able to show you transportation budget, and I know there's a thing on that. I just haven't focused on that because I've been pretty focused on like the teachers component of it for obvious reasons. But there's a transportation slide that compares your transportation cost. You can compare with other districts. It also compares your transportation cost with your reimbursement for the transportation costs, because the state does give you reimbursement, and working right, you should be trying to maximize that as much as you can. So good, that's good. Now, if you could just get people to stop talking to me during the day, I can work on this all day.
There's one that I have a particular curiosity about, since you're taking notes, which is special education.
I have
outside placement and internally, what are we spending? Those are numbers that I would love to see and analyze.
Okay, I did. I don't know if Dr. Marseille ever gave it to you, but I did a whole presentation on special ed toward the end of last year in my first tour of duty. I don't think we ever got a chance to do it. It was kind of in between, but it's an awesome presentation. I'm going to dust that.
Can't wait to see it. I have not seen it, and I can't wait to see it. And if you could update it, that would be better.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm going to have to update it because it's now a year later. So
right. I appreciate all of that. Thank you, Mr. Linderman. I neglected at the end of the refinancing presentation to ask members of the public if they had any questions. And then right when I was uttering that sentence, I saw a hand. Dr. Smith, do you have a comment or a question?
Good evening. When you asked the question about special education, I just wanted to point to the fact that next month's Ed Affairs presentation will be focused on education, and I can make sure that Dr. Gallagher talks to Mr. Linderman to get some key slides from him around the budget that she can include, because that is the topic for our next meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Appreciate that very much. Back out to the public. If any of our attendees who are in the public would like to raise their hand, I will call on you, and I'll give you another minute or two to raise your hand. And if that minute passes, then I will assume you have no questions. And I believe, Mr. Linderman, you're at the end of your agenda, of your presentation.
We're done. I was just making some quick notes. I can't write as fast as I think.
Thank you. All right, seeing no hands raised in the participants window, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Move to adjourn, Julie Haywood.
Is there a second?
Second, Leah Mulhern.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.